If you find peace in these dark journeys through time, make sure to follow us for more historical adventures. Tonight, we begin in ancient Greece, a land remembered for marble perfection, for thinkers like Plato, for warriors shaped by Sparta, for golden temples that glow in the imagination long after the sun has set. A civilization that gave the world philosophy, democracy, and statues that never quite figured out pants. But beneath the polished myths, there is something else. Something hotter, something louder, something far less comfortable. Because while ancient Greece laid the foundations of the modern world, it also demanded a daily endurance test that most people today would fail before breakfast. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see who's awake while the rest of the world sleeps. Now dim the lights, let the room cool just a little. Maybe let a fan hum softly in the background and ease yourself into the past. Welcome to ancient Greece, where your day does not begin with an alarm, but with heat, a slow creeping heat that rises with the sun and seeps into everything. Your home is modest, sun-dried mud bricks or rough, uneven stone, small windows, no glass, only wooden shutters, barely holding back goats, dust, and the occasional breeze. If the gods feel generous, there is no insulation, no airflow, no privacy, unless you count the one corner where the family goat doesn't sleep. You wake early, not from discipline, but because lying still has become unbearable. By sunrise, the walls are already radiating warmth. By mid-morning, they feel alive with it. In summer, the house becomes an oven. In winter, those same walls turn against you, cold, damp, unforgiving. You sleep on a thin mat, or a sack filled with straw. No pillow, just a rolled cloak, or your arm. If you're lucky, the lice left you alone. But luck is rare here. There is no running water. So your morning begins with a task, not a routine. You walk to a public fountain or a distant well, carrying clay jars, balanced carefully on your shoulders. Every step matters, because one slip, one crack, and the water is gone, along with your energy and possibly your patience. You don't bathe in the morning. That kind of luxury belongs to the end of the day, if it happens at all. Instead, you splash your face, rub olive oil into your skin, then scrape it off with a curved metal blade, a strigil. It removes the dirt along with any illusion of cleanliness. Imagine coating yourself in oil only to peel it away again. That is your version of fresh, and you are not alone. Your family lives in the same room, sleeps in the same air, eats within arm's reach. Every sound shared, every smell unavoidable. The street outside, it's everything. Your hallway, your marketplace, your gossip network, and your trash dump you haven't even eaten yet. And already your back aches, your skin sticks, your patience is thinning. This is the best part of your day. Breakfast arrives, if you can call it that. A piece of barley bread, dense, dry, stale enough to remind you of yesterday's disappointment. It's called maza, ground barley mixed with water, flattened and baked on hot stones or buried in ash. There is no sweetness, no softness, just effort and survival. You chew slowly, partly to make it last, partly because your teeth have no choice. You might dip it in watered-down wine, not for pleasure, but because the water isn't always safe. There are no filters, no boiling rituals, no guarantees, so even children drink diluted wine, not to celebrate, but to survive. If you're wealthy, maybe there are figs, olives, a bit of goat cheese, but you are not wealthy. You are hoping your bread isn't crawling, hoping it doesn't crack something important when you bite down. There is no coffee, no eggs, no fruit bowls, no honey, unless you know a beekeeper and know how to convince him. Meals are fast. There are no chairs, no forks, no slow moments of appreciation. You eat, you nod, you move on. And if you are a woman, you wait. You eat later, after the men, after the conversation is over and the best of the disappointment has already been taken. It's a strange irony. The same culture that celebrates wine, poetry, and elaborate feasts cannot be bothered to make breakfast worth remembering. Now you try to clean yourself properly, or at least something close to it. Hygiene here is not about being clean. It is about appearing less unclean than yesterday. You pour cold water over your body, in a courtyard, or at a public fountain. If you are lucky, there is a bathhouse nearby. Most people are not. There is no soap, no shampoo, no soft sponge waiting by your side. Only oil, always oil. You rub it into your skin again to loosen the dirt, the sweat, the dust, then scrape again. The same ritual, the same result. You are cleaner in theory. In practice, you still smell like heat and effort, and so does everyone else. Teeth, there are no toothbrushes. You might chew on a twig, rub charcoal against your gums, rinse with vinegar if you can tolerate it. Otherwise, you hope your teeth hold. Hope the pain doesn't come, because if it does, there is very little anyone can do. Perfume exists, if you can afford it. A touch of myrrh, a hint of rose oil, applied carefully before stepping into a world that will undo it within minutes. The result is unmistakable. Dust, sweat, heat, and something faintly floral, trying its best. Laundry is rare. Clothes are beaten against stones in rivers. If you are poor, your tunic hasn't seen water in weeks, maybe longer. It clings to you now, in places it shouldn't, in ways that feel almost deliberate. And now you dress, if you can call it that. You have options, two of them, a chiton or a himation. Both are rectangles, fabric, wrapped and pinned, held together by hope and a small piece of metal. There is no tailoring, no fit, and certainly no protection from the wind. One wrong movement, one careless step, and everything shifts. There is no underwear, no safety net, only gravity and your ability to ignore it. Your feet, maybe sandals, maybe not. If not, then stone, hot, unforgiving, endless. You walk across streets layered with dust, animal waste, and whatever the market discarded that morning. The sun rises higher, and it does not care. By noon, your shoulders burn, your skin tightens, your tunic clings in ways that defy geometry, and still, the day continues. You pass men training, completely naked, voices echoing through the gymnasium. You pass politicians, speaking loudly, garments barely holding together. No one seems surprised, because here, this is normal. If you are wealthy, your clothing has color. Soft purple, faint saffron. If you are not, it is white. or brown, because dye is expensive and you are not worth the expense. So you walk, sunburned, sweating, wrapped in cloth that may betray you at any moment, and you realize something quietly. You are only halfway through the day. Welcome to ancient Greece, where survival is not dramatic. It is constant and exhausting, and you are only halfway through your day. The sun hangs above you now, heavy and unmoving. The air feels thicker, voices louder, everything just a little more exhausting. You step into the agora, the crowded heart of the city, and for a moment, you think you can simply exist. Buy a handful of olives, avoid stepping in something unfortunate. Maybe, if the gods allow it, pet a stray goat and move on with your life. But then, he appears, barefoot, unbothered, wrapped in a cloak that has seen better centuries. Socrates. He looks at you, not casually, but completely. Do you believe in truth? You hesitate. You shouldn't hesitate, but you do. I guess. A mistake. What is truth? And just like that, your morning is gone. 3 hours later, you are no closer to an answer, but you are much closer to an existential collapse. You begin to understand why some people consider moving to Sparta just to avoid conversations like this. Socrates never wrote anything down. That task fell to his student, Plato. But Socrates left something else behind, an impression, a persistent, unavoidable presence, one that eventually irritated the city of Athens so thoroughly they executed him, officially for corrupting the youth and for not believing in the gods. Unofficially, he probably just wouldn't stop asking questions during dinner. Philosophy here is not quiet. It is not reflective. It is not a cozy room filled with books and polite nodding. It is loud, public, unrelenting. Debates erupt in open spaces. Without warning, without moderation, voices rise, hands gesture wildly. Egos expand to fill the Parthenon itself. There are no microphones, only lungs and confidence. You cannot simply observe. That is not allowed. Philosophers do not perform for an audience. They consume one. You pass too close to Plato's circle, and suddenly you are part of it. You say one thing, one slightly incorrect, poorly phrased thought, and now you are the example, the demonstration, the cautionary tale of the unexamined life. Even children are not spared. Aristotle once taught a boy named Alexander the Great, a teenager who would later conquer half the known world. Imagine that. Your teacher hands you the world and says, "Go fix it." Philosophy gives you logic, ethics, science, political theory, but here, in its natural habitat, it also gives you a headache, a crisis of identity, and a very real chance of being publicly dismantled by a man in sandals. And just when you think you've survived enough humiliation for one day, you realize something else. You've become noticeable. People know your name. They nod when you pass. They listen when you speak. That is your first mistake, because in Athens, being too popular is dangerous. Not illegal, not even immoral, just dangerous. There is a word for it, ostracism, and it is as simple as it is terrifying. Once a year, citizens gather, not to celebrate, not to mourn, but to decide if someone needs to disappear. If enough agree, they take a shard of pottery, an ostracon, and write a name, your name. 6,000 votes. That is all it takes. No trial, no defense, no explanation. Just leave. 10 years. Gone. You don't have to be a criminal. In fact, it helps if you're not. Maybe you're persuasive. Maybe you're successful. Maybe people simply like you too much. And that makes you suspicious. A threat. Even the respected are not safe. Aristides, known as the Just, was once voted out because someone was tired of hearing how just he was. And Themistocles, the man who helped save Athens, eventually found himself exiled because success has an expiration date. Ostracism was meant to protect democracy, but often it punished excellence. So you learn to balance, be respected but not admired, be visible but not memorable, speak but never too well. It is a strange system, a reality where popularity is a liability, where being liked too much can quietly erase you. And all of this tension exists under a simple truth. You may not even live long enough for it to matter. In ancient Greece, you don't ask if you will die young, only how soon and how painfully. Life expectancy hovers around 30, 35 if you are fortunate, and that is only if you survive childhood. Many do not. Disease, malnutrition, neglect. Roughly 1 in 3 children never reach adulthood. Death is everywhere. A small cut becomes infection. A fever becomes a mystery. Childbirth becomes a gamble. Water becomes a risk. Cities make it worse. Crowded homes, open drains, shared fountains. Disease moves quickly, silently, efficiently. During the plague of Athens, the city lost 1/3 of its people. The historian Thucydides wrote about it, then caught it himself, and somehow survived. Most did not. War is constant. If you are a man, there is a strong chance you will die holding a spear or rowing a warship until your body gives out. And even if you survive the battle, infection waits. There are no antibiotics, no safety nets, only hope, and whatever herbs someone recommends. And then there are the gods, because in ancient Greece, death is not always random. Sometimes it is personal. The gods of Mount Olympus are watching. Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Poseidon. They are not gentle, they are not forgiving. They are unpredictable. Forget a sacrifice and your crops fail. Say the wrong prayer and your ship sinks. Step somewhere sacred and something bites back. Religion is not comfort. It is maintenance, constant, careful, exhausting. Before planting, you pray. Before sailing, you pour wine into the sea. Before war, you sacrifice. Sometimes animals, sometimes your peace of mind. Every god has preferences and grudges. Apollo may protect you or curse you, depending on something your grandfather did. Hera protects marriage and destroys women when angered. Athena rewards wisdom and occasionally turns people into spiders. And if the Olympians are not enough, there are spirits, nymphs, satyrs, river gods, creatures just outside your understanding, waiting. The worst part, you never know what caused your suffering. Was it today's mistake, yesterday's, something inherited from a relative long gone? It doesn't matter, the result is the same. And yet, you believe, not out of devotion, but out of necessity. Because after everything, the heat, the hunger, The questions, the wars, the sickness, the gods. You are left with one final thought. Would you survive here, even one day? No, you wouldn't. You would fold before noon. The heat alone would break you. The food would exhaust you. The constant tension, war, disease, divine punishment would strip away the fantasy almost instantly. You are not used to this, to carrying water before sunrise, to living without privacy, to accepting discomfort as normal. You imagine marble statues, brilliant thinkers, epic poetry, but those belong to a few, a very small few. For everyone else, it is labor, restriction, funerals, far too often, democracy, only if you qualify, medicine, garlic, and hope, gods, frequently furious, and yet they endured. They built temples that still stand. They wrote plays, still performed. They argued ideas, still debated. They shaped a world they would never see. You would not last, but they did. Not because life was easy, but because they found meaning inside the struggle. They questioned everything, fought constantly, created beautifully, died young, and still left something behind. So no, you wouldn't survive your first sunstroke, your first infection, or your first unexpected philosophical interrogation. But if you did, if you adapted, if you listened, if you endured, you might find yourself among them, among people who are flawed, exhausted, relentless, and strangely brilliant. They wouldn't judge you, not for long. They would hand you a tunic, point toward a hill, and say, "Good, now carry that." They feared her, yes, but fear was never the whole story. There was something else beneath it, something quieter, something that lingered longer than terror ever could. Admiration. Across the centuries, Boudica refused to die. She slipped through time like smoke, reforming, reappearing, reimagined, in the rigid stone of Victorian statues, in the sweeping verses of Alfred Lord Tennyson, in textbooks, whispered to restless schoolchildren who barely understood what they were inheriting. She became something larger than memory, a symbol, especially for those who had long been told to be silent. Women, in particular, saw in her story a fire that could not be extinguished, no matter how many times the empire tried. Her chariot, its blades spinning, its wheels cutting, did not stop in the mud of ancient Britain. It kept moving, through time, through imagination, through every generation that needed a figure who refused to kneel. And so, though her body vanished into the uncertain silence of history, her voice never did. It rides with the wind, it screams in the fire, it echoes in every soul that has ever stood on the edge of submission and whispered quietly, "I will not kneel." Velopin wine a meal now. Centuries pass easily, empires rise, empires collapse, maps are redrawn, rewritten, forgotten, but some shadows do not fade. They stretch, they linger, they wait. Across the British Isles, her presence still hums beneath the surface, not loudly, not obviously, but persistently. In London, just beyond the steady pulse of traffic, near Westminster Bridge, she stands, bronze, silent, eternal, a statue of Boudica on her war chariot, her daughters beside her, her gaze fixed forward, unmoving, unyielding. Below her, tourists wander, cameras click, Engines hum. No one really stops. No one really listens. But the ground remembers. It always does. Because her legacy was never just about what she destroyed. It was about what she asked. A question carved into the bones of every empire that followed. What happens when the silenced rise? Daza. She was not perfect. History rarely allows for perfection. Her rebellion burned hot, and it burned cruel. Cities fell, massacres followed. Tens of thousands died beneath the fury she unleashed. This is the part that lingers in the dark, the part that does not fit neatly into statues or poetry. But history is not written by saints. It is carved by those willing to resist, and resistance, by its very nature, is rarely clean. Still, that is not why she endured. She endured because of what came before the fire. Loss, humiliation, the slow grinding weight of an empire that believed it could break anything and anyone. And yet, she stood, a woman stripped of everything, who refused to disappear, a queen who refused to be defined by her conquerors, a mother who turned grief into a weapon. And somewhere in that transformation, she became something else. Not just a figure, not just a name, but an idea. An idea. Latin historians still debate her, her choices, her strategy, her motives. They sift through fragments, argue over details, dissect what little remains. But ask anyone in Britain who she was, and you won't get footnotes. You'll get something simpler, something older. They'll tell you she was the queen who made Rome bleed, the one who united tribes that had spent generations tearing each other apart, the one who proved that even the mightiest empire could be wounded. And in that memory, she becomes more than history. She becomes a symbol of rebellion, of dignity, of the quiet, unbreakable will to be free. Because even when Rome rebuilt its cities, even when it redrew its maps, it could not erase her. Her flame did not die. It spread into every voice that dares to say no, into every life that refuses to bend, into every soul that would rather fall than live on its knees. Boudica is gone, but her legend, it rides forever. And yet, long before rebellion, before empires, before chariots carved lines into the earth, there was something far more intimate, far more universal, something that touched every life, no matter how powerful or forgotten. Illness. The ancients. Sickness was never random. It was never just the body failing. There were no microscopes, no germ theory, no quiet, clinical explanations. Those would come much later. Instead, disease was a message, a disturbance, a fracture in something larger than flesh, a disruption in the delicate balance between body, mind, spirit, and the world itself. In the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, illness carried a weight far beyond pain. If you fell sick, it meant something. You had offended a god, broken a sacred rule, invited something unseen into your life. Diagnosis did not begin with symptoms. It began with questions. What have you done? Who have you angered? Priests stood beside healers. Spells were whispered alongside remedies. They read omens. They interpreted dreams. They searched for meaning in suffering. Because to them, illness was not just physical. It was moral, spiritual, cosmic. They farther east. In the ancient traditions of China, the idea of balance took on a quieter, more intricate form. Everything existed in opposition and harmony. yin and yang, cold and heat, dark and light, stillness and motion. Health was not a fixed state, it was a constant negotiation, a delicate equilibrium between forces that could never fully settle. A cough was not just a cough, it had a time, a rhythm, an emotional shadow. Healers listened carefully, not just to the body, but to the story behind it. And when imbalance was found, they did not attack it, they guided it back toward harmony. In ancient Greece, something began to shift, not completely, but noticeably. The physician Hippocrates stepped away from the idea that gods directly punished the sick, yet even he could not escape the language of balance. The body, he believed, was governed by four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, each tied to an element, each shaping not only the body, but the personality itself. Too much black bile, and a person sank into melancholy. Too much yellow bile, and they burned with aggression. Illness was imbalance, always imbalance, and so treatment became a process of correction, not destruction, not eradication, but restoration. Across the world, in different languages, under different skies, the same idea repeated itself, again and again and again. Health meant wholeness, not just the absence of pain, but the presence of balance. Whether in the flowing energies of Ayurveda or the spiritual interpretations of African healing traditions, there was a shared understanding. Human beings were not separate, not from nature, not from each other, not from the unseen forces that shaped their lives. And when that connection fractured, the body suffered. So when ancient healers placed their hands upon the sick, they were not just searching for wounds, they were listening for imbalance, for disruption, for something out of place. Because to heal a person, you had to treat more than what you could see. And in the land of pyramids and endless desert skies, where the air itself seemed to shimmer with something ancient and watchful, medicine became something else entirely. Not just knowledge, not just ritual, but a bridge between the human and the divine. In ancient Egypt, healers were not simply doctors, they were intermediaries, sacred figures standing between flesh and eternity. They were called Swano, and their work moved through two worlds at once, one of blood and bone, the other of gods and spirits. The centuries turn, empires fall into dust, libraries burn, names fade, or are carved deeper into stone. And yet, some ideas refuse to die. Today we live in a world that would feel like sorcery to the ancients. Machines hum softly in sterile rooms. Screens glow with the quiet certainty of data. A body can be mapped, scanned, understood in seconds. We call it progress, and it is. But in the quiet corners of modern medicine, something older still lingers, something familiar, something ancient,